The moment Ethan Reynolds stepped into the dimly lit wine cellar, he realized he had made a terrible mistake agreeing to this corporate retreat activity. He had built a shipping empire worth $3 billion by trusting his gut instincts about people and business, not by swirling glasses of fermented grapes and pretending to taste notes of blackberry and oak. Yet here he stood, surrounded by polished executives from the merger deal, all of them eager to impress him with their sophisticated palates, while he would have been just as happy with a cold beer. The wine cellar belonged to an exclusive vineyard in Napa Valley, all exposed brick and soft amber lighting that made the rows of bottles look like treasure. His business partner Marcus had insisted this would be the perfect informal setting to finalize the details of their acquisition. But Ethan suspected it was just an excuse for everyone to drink expensive wine on the company dime. He loosened his tie slightly, already feeling trapped by the evening ahead. Then she walked in, and the entire atmosphere shifted. She carried herself with the kind of confidence that came from genuine expertise rather than performance. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore black pants with a crisp white shirt and a sommelier pin that caught the light. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold, bright and alive with an intensity he had not seen in anyone in years. She looked at the room full of suited executives like a teacher surveying students who thought they already knew everything, a small, knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Good evening, everyone. My name is Natalie Kane, and I will be your guide tonight through some truly exceptional wines." Her voice had a warm quality that made even the formal introduction feel personal. "But before we begin, I need you all to forget everything you think you know about wine." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the group. Ethan found himself leaning against one of the heavy wooden tables, genuinely curious now. Wine is not about memorizing flavor profiles or impressing people at dinner parties, Natalie continued, moving between the tables with easy grace. Wine is about passion, history, the hands that picked the grapes, the soil that fed them, the weather that year, the winemaker's dreams. Every bottle tells a story, and tonight I am going to teach you how to listen. She started pouring the first wine, a crisp white that caught the candlelight like liquid gold. As she moved around the room, Ethan noticed how she made eye contact with each person, how she poured with practiced precision, how her entire body language changed when she talked about the wine. This was not someone going through the motions of a job. This was someone doing exactly what she was meant to do. When she reached his spot at the table, their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Her hand hesitated for just a fraction of a second before she poured his glass. "You look skeptical," she said quietly, meant only for him. "I am not much of a wine person," Ethan admitted. "I am more of a get-to-the-point kind of guy. Then this will be interesting." She finished pouring and moved on, but he could have sworn he saw amusement dancing in her eyes. Natalie returned to the front of the room and picked up her own glass. "This is a Sauvignon Blanc from a small vineyard in Sonoma. The vintner is a woman named Elena Ruiz who left a career in medicine to follow her dream of making wine. She was told she was crazy, that she was too old to start over, that the market was too competitive. She made this wine anyway." The way Natalie spoke transformed the simple act of drinking into something profound. She did not just describe flavors, she painted pictures. She talked about the fog that rolled in from the Pacific, how it cooled the grapes at night and concentrated their flavors. She described Elena's hands sorting through the harvest, selecting only the perfect clusters. She made them understand that they were not just tasting wine, they were tasting someone's courage, their defiance, their hope. Ethan found himself actually paying attention to the wine in his glass, trying to taste what she was describing. And somehow, impossibly, he could. The bright citrus notes, the mineral undertone, the crisp finish that made him want another sip. Or maybe he just wanted to keep listening to her talk. The evening progressed through 5 more wines, each one accompanied by Natalie's passionate storytelling. She talked about a Pinot Noir made by a 4th-generation winemaker trying to honor his grandfather's legacy while adapting to climate change. She described a bold Cabernet crafted by a young couple who had mortgaged everything they owned to buy 10 acres of land they believed in. Every wine had a heartbeat, and Natalie made them all feel it. The other executives gradually became more animated, arguing good-naturedly about what they tasted, sharing stories about wines they had tried. The stiff corporate atmosphere dissolved into something warmer, more human. Ethan realized this was probably what Marcus had hoped for, this breaking down of professional walls. But Ethan could not focus on networking or business. He could not stop watching Natalie. She moved through the room like a conductor leading an orchestra, drawing out conversation here, offering insight there, always with that undercurrent of genuine passion that made everything she said compelling. She was not performing enthusiasm. She was sharing something she truly loved, and it was magnetic when someone asked a pretentious question clearly designed to show off. Natalie handled it with gentle humor that educated without embarrassing. When a quieter executive admitted she could not tell the difference between 2 reds, Natalie spent extra time with her, guiding her through the tasting with such patience and encouragement that the woman's face lit up when she finally identified the distinction. Ethan had spent years evaluating people, determining who had real talent versus who just talked a good game. Natalie Kane was the real thing. As the formal tasting concluded and people began mingling, helping themselves to the cheese and fruit spread, Ethan made his way over to where Natalie was organizing her notes at the side table. "That was impressive," he said. She looked up, and up close he could see the gold flecks in her hazel eyes, the light freckles across her nose, the small scar above her left eyebrow. "Thank you. Did I convert you into a wine person? Maybe. Or maybe you are just that good at telling stories. Wine is stories. That is the whole point." She closed her leather notebook and studied him with open curiosity. "You are Ethan Reynolds, right? The one everyone is trying so hard to impress tonight. Is it that obvious? I have done enough corporate events to recognize the hierarchy. Plus, everyone keeps glancing at you to see if they are saying the right thing. It must be exhausting being that important." He laughed, surprised by her directness. "You have no idea. So why did you really come tonight if you are not a wine person? You could have sent someone else to represent you." Ethan considered lying, giving some corporate answer about team building and relationship development. But something about Natalie's straightforward gaze made him want to be honest. "My business partner thought it would be good for me to do something that was not about spreadsheets and logistics for once. He thinks I have become too focused on numbers and not enough on people." "Has he? Maybe. I built my company by outworking everyone else, by making the tough calls, by never letting emotions cloud judgment. It works, but somewhere along the way I stopped enjoying any of it." Natalie tilted her head, considering him. "That is a sad way to live. You sound like my sister." "Your sister is probably right." She started gathering wine glasses, clearly preparing to clean up. "Passion matters, Mr. Reynolds. It is what makes life worth living. Without it, you are just going through motions. You clearly have passion for what you do. How did you become a sommelier?" "Long story. I've got time." She paused, a stack of glasses in her hands, and something shifted in her expression. A mix of surprise and wariness, like she was not used to people genuinely asking. My father owned a restaurant, nothing fancy, but he loved wine. He used to let me help him choose wines for the menu when I was a teenager. I loved how wine brought people together, how the right bottle could make a meal memorable. So I studied, got certified, worked my way through every restaurant and vineyard that would have me. Now I do private tastings and consulting. Do you love it? Every single day. The answer was immediate and absolute. Even the hard days, even when clients are difficult or the work is exhausting, I cannot imagine doing anything else. Ethan felt something twist in his chest, a kind of longing he had not let himself feel in years. When was the last time he had felt that way about his work? About anything? That must be nice, he said quietly. Natalie set down the glasses and looked at him with those sharp, knowing eyes. It is not about nice, Mr. Reynolds. It is about knowing who you are and having the courage to live accordingly. A lot of people do not. Ethan. Call me Ethan. All right, Ethan. She smiled, and it transformed her entire face, made her look younger and somehow even more beautiful. Can I ask you something? Sure. When you drank that Sauvignon Blanc tonight, the one from Alina who left medicine, what did you taste? He thought about it, trying to remember past all the wines that had followed. Honestly, I tasted determination. Which sounds ridiculous, but that is what came to mind. Like someone had put their whole heart into making something perfect. Natalie's smile widened. Then you got it. You understand wine better than you think. The technical knowledge is just vocabulary. The important part is being open enough to feel what the winemaker was trying to share. Is that your secret? Making people feel instead of just drink? That is life's secret, not just wines. She picked up her notebook and tucked it under her arm. I should finish cleaning up. Your colleagues are starting to leave. Ethan glanced around and realized the cellar had mostly emptied while they talked. Marcus was near the door, catching his eye with a knowing look that Ethan chose to ignore. Natalie, would you have dinner with me? The words came out before he fully thought them through, but he did not regret them. She blinked, clearly surprised. Like a business dinner, like a date, if you are interested. You do not waste time, do you? I spent the last 2 hours watching you light up a room full of jaded executives with your passion for wine. I would like to get to know you better, see what else you are passionate about. That seems like a good enough reason to me. She studied him for a long moment, and he could practically see her weighing the decision. I do not usually date clients. I will find someone else to teach me about wine. Problem solved. That surprised a laugh out of her. You are serious. Very. Okay, dinner. But somewhere casual, and you have to promise not to order the most expensive wine on the menu just to impress me. Deal. Tomorrow night. You really do not waste time. But she was smiling as she pulled out her phone. Give me your number. They exchanged information, and Ethan felt an unfamiliar flutter of anticipation. It had been years since he had asked someone on a date, longer still since he had wanted to. The women he usually met were either interested in his money or his connections, not in him. Natalie had looked at him like he was just a person, someone worth being honest with. It was refreshing and terrifying in equal measure. As he left the wine cellar and walked out into the cool Napa Valley night, Marcus fell into step beside him. So, you and the sommelier. Marcus said, not bothering to hide his amusement. I asked her to dinner. I saw. I also saw you actually engaged with something for the first time in months. She is good for you already. It is just dinner, Marcus. Do not start planning my wedding. I am just saying, you looked alive in there. Like the Ethan I knew in college who actually enjoyed life instead of just conquering it. Ethan did not have a response to that, because Marcus was right. For a few hours, listening to Natalie talk about wine and passion and courage, he had forgotten about market shares and logistics chains, and the constant pressure of running a $3 billion company. He had just been a man listening to a fascinating woman, and it had felt good. The next evening, Ethan found himself more nervous than he had been before major business negotiations. He had changed his shirt 3 times before settling on something casual but nice, jeans and a button-down instead of his usual suit. Natalie had suggested a small Italian restaurant in downtown Napa, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and candles in wine bottles, and he arrived 10 minutes early because he could not stand waiting at his hotel anymore. She arrived right on time, wearing a simple green dress that brought out the hazel in her eyes, her hair down around her shoulders instead of pulled back. She looked different outside the professional setting of the wine cellar, softer somehow, but still with that core of confidence that had attracted him from the start. "You actually came," she said as she approached the table where he had been pretending to study the menu. "You thought I would not." Rich guys ask women out all the time. Actually following through is less common. She slid into the seat across from him, and he caught a hint of her perfume, something light and citrusy. "I am not most rich guys. I am starting to see that." She accepted a menu from the hovering waiter, and they both ordered without much deliberation. Ethan chose pasta and ignored the wine list entirely, letting Natalie pick a bottle he had never heard of but suspected would be perfect. Once they were alone again, Natalie leaned forward slightly. "So, Ethan Reynolds, billionaire shipping magnate, tell me something real about yourself, not the corporate biography version, something true." That is a big question for appetizers. I do not do small talk well. Life is too short. Ethan found himself smiling despite his nerves. "All right. Something real. I grew up working class. My dad was a dock worker, and he died when I was 19. I took his life insurance money and a huge amount of student loans and put myself through business school. Started my first shipping company with 2 boats and a lot of nerve. Built it into what it is today by working 20-hour days for 15 years straight. And now I have everything I thought I wanted, and I am not sure any of it actually matters." The words hung between them, more honest than he had meant to be. Natalie did not look shocked or uncomfortable. She just nodded slowly. "That is real," she said. "Thank you for trusting me with it. Your turn. Something real about Natalie Kane." She took a sip of water, considering. "I was engaged 2 years ago. He was a lawyer, very successful, everything looked perfect on paper. But he could not understand why I wanted to be a sommelier instead of something more prestigious. He kept pushing me to go to law school or get an MBA, said I was wasting my potential on wine. I realized he did not actually love me. He loved the idea of me being something I was not. So I ended it, even though everyone said I was crazy, and I threw myself completely into wine. Best decision I ever made, even if I still sometimes wake up wondering if I will ever find someone who actually gets it." "Gets what?" "That passion is not frivolous. That doing what you love is not irresponsible or childish. That life is too short to spend it making other people happy at the expense of your own soul." The appetizers arrived, some kind of bruschetta that Ethan barely tasted because he was too focused on the woman across from him. Natalie had the kind of raw honesty that was rare in his world, where everyone performed and positioned and never showed vulnerability. "Your ex-fiancé was an idiot," Ethan said. "Maybe. Or maybe we just wanted different things. But thank you for saying that." They fell into easier conversation as the meal progressed. Natalie told him about growing up in the restaurant her father owned, how she had learned to read people by watching them at tables, understanding that food and wine were never just about sustenance, but about connection and celebration and comfort. She described her favorite vineyard in Burgundy, A tiny family operation where the winemaker still crushed some grapes by foot because she believed it made better wine. Ethan found himself sharing stories he rarely told anyone. About his mother, who had worked 2 jobs to help him get through school and had died before seeing him succeed. About his sister Claire, who taught high school and thought his lifestyle was ridiculous but loved him anyway. About the early days of his business when he could not afford to pay himself a salary and survived on ramen and determination. "You miss it," Natalie observed. "The struggling." "Is that crazy?" "No, everything meant something then. Every small victory was real. Now you have so much success that nothing feels significant anymore." "Exactly." He was amazed at how easily she understood. "I keep achieving goals and moving the goalposts, but I never actually feel satisfied. Because achievement is not the same as fulfillment. You have been so focused on building something impressive that you forgot to build a life you actually want to live." The wine bottle sat mostly full between them, because they were too engrossed in conversation to drink much. The restaurant filled and emptied around them, and still they talked. Natalie was smart and funny and completely unpretentious, despite her expertise. She asked him hard questions and listened to his answers like they actually mattered. And when he asked about her dreams, she lit up in that same way she had at the wine tasting, talking about wanting to someday own her own vineyard, something small and personal where she could make wine that told her story. "Why have not you done it yet?" Ethan asked. "Money, mostly. Land in wine country is expensive, and starting a vineyard is a massive investment with no guarantee of return. Plus, I would need to learn the production side better, not just the tasting and selling. It is a dream, but a distant one. What if it did not have to be distant?" She gave him a warning look. Do not what? Do not offer to fund it or invest or whatever wealthy person thing you are thinking. I like you, Ethan, but I do not need a benefactor. If I am going to do this, I am going to do it myself when I am ready. He held up his hands in surrender, but he was grinning. "Fair enough, I respect that. Good." But she was smiling too. "Though it is a little bit attractive that your first instinct is to try to help. Only a little bit, do not push it." By the time they left the restaurant, it was past midnight. They walked slowly back toward where Natalie had parked, neither of them ready for the evening to end. The streets of Napa were quiet, just the soft sounds of distant conversations from other late diners and the rustle of wind through the trees. "I had a really good time tonight," Natalie said as they reached her car. "Good enough for a second date. Definitely. But fair warning, I am going to be busy for the next week. I have 3 corporate events and a wedding tasting scheduled. I can wait." Ethan stepped a little closer. "Can I kiss you?" she answered by closing the distance between them and pressing her lips to his. It was a soft kiss, tentative and sweet, but it sent electricity through his entire body. When they pulled apart, Natalie was blushing slightly. "I do not usually do that on first dates," she said. "I am glad you made an exception." "Me too." She pulled out her car keys, looking flustered in the most charming way. "Text me. We will figure out when I am free." He watched her drive away, standing on the sidewalk with a stupid grin on his face like a teenager. Marcus would never let him hear the end of this, but Ethan did not care. For the first time in years, he was excited about something that had nothing to do with business. Over the next week, they texted constantly. Natalie sent him photos from her events with commentary about difficult clients and beautiful wines. Ethan found himself sharing details about his days that he never bothered to articulate before, asking her opinion on things that had nothing to do with her expertise, just because he wanted to hear her perspective. They talked on the phone twice, conversations that stretched past 2 hours without either of them noticing. Ethan was supposed to return to Seattle, where his company was headquartered, but he kept extending his stay in California, inventing reasons why the merger needed more in-person oversight. Marcus definitely knew what he was really doing, but had the grace not to call him out on it. Their second date was a hike through the hills above Napa Valley. Natalie knew a trail that offered stunning views of the vineyards below, all those neat rows of vines stretching toward the horizon. They packed sandwiches and bottles of water, and Ethan realized he had not done something this simple and enjoyable in more than a decade. "This is where I come when I need to think," Natalie said as they sat on a flat rock overlooking the valley. "It reminds me why I love this place, what I am working toward. It is beautiful." Ethan was not looking at the view, though. He was watching the way the sunlight caught in Natalie's hair, the peaceful expression on her face. "You are staring. Can you blame me?" She turned to look at him, and her expression grew more serious. "Ethan, what are we doing here?" "What do you mean? You live in Seattle. You run a billion-dollar company. I live here. I am a sommelier who barely makes rent some months. This is not exactly practical." Since when is love practical? The word hung between them, too big and too soon, but also completely honest. Natalie's eyes widened. "Love? I know it is fast. I know it probably sounds crazy. But I have spent 15 years being practical and building something impressive, and I have never felt the way I do when I am with you. You make me want to actually live my life instead of just managing it." "Ethan, you do not have to say anything. I just wanted you to know. Whatever this is, however complicated it might be, I want to figure it out. If you do too." Natalie was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the vineyards. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "I swore after my engagement ended that I would not compromise who I am for anyone ever again. That I would not give up my dreams or change my path just because someone else wanted me to. I am not asking you to. I know you are not. That is what scares me." She turned to face him fully. "Because I am already falling for you, and I have no idea how to make this work, and I am terrified that I am going to get my heart broken." Ethan reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "I am terrified too, but I think you are worth being scared for." She kissed him then, deep and desperate and full of all the hope and fear they were both feeling. When they finally pulled apart, Natalie rested her forehead against his. "Okay," she whispered. "Let us try. Let us figure this out." The next month was a whirlwind of stolen moments and logistical gymnastics. Ethan flew back to Seattle but returned to California almost every weekend. Natalie adjusted her schedule to maximize their time together. They met each other's friends. Ethan enduring good-natured teasing from Natalie's sommelier colleagues about being a wine novice. Natalie charming Marcus and the rest of Ethan's inner circle with her wit and warmth. Claire, Ethan's sister, came to visit and insisted on meeting the woman who had her brother acting like a love-struck fool. They met for lunch at a cafe in San Francisco, and Ethan watched nervously as the two most important women in his life sized each other up. "So you are the sommelier who has my brother drinking wine instead of beer," Claire said with a grin. "Guilty. Though I am working on getting him to appreciate beer better too. Life is too short to drink cheap lager." Natalie seemed completely unfazed by the scrutiny. "I like her," Claire announced to Ethan. "She has good taste and does not take your crap." "I do not give him much crap to take," Natalie said. "He is actually pretty wonderful when he stops trying to solve everything like a business problem. That is the trick, is it? Just getting him to be human. Something like that." Ethan watched them laugh together and felt something settle in his chest. His sister's approval meant more to him than he had realized it would. Claire had been skeptical of his previous relationships, always seeing through the women who were more interested in his money than in him. but she clearly liked Natalie, and that mattered. Later, as they walked along the waterfront, Claire pulled him aside while Natalie was taking a phone call about an upcoming event. "You love her," Claire said. It was not a question. Yes, like really love her. Not just infatuation or midlife crisis love. Really love her. "She makes me want to be better, to actually enjoy life. I did not realize how miserable I had become until I met her." Claire hugged him tightly. "Then do not mess this up. She is special, Ethan, and you deserve to be happy." "Thanks, sis. Also, you should probably figure out the whole living in different states thing sooner rather than later. Long distance only works for so long." She was right, and Ethan knew it. The question was what to do about it. He could not ask Natalie to give up her life in Napa, her work and her dreams. But he also could not just abandon the company he had spent 15 years building. The problem gnawed at him, even as he tried to stay present when they were together. Natalie noticed, of course. She noticed everything. "You are thinking too hard," she said one evening as they cooked dinner together in her small apartment. "I can practically hear the gears turning. Sorry, just trying to figure things out. The distance thing, among other things." She set down her knife and turned to face him. "Ethan, I know this is complicated, but we agreed to take it one day at a time, remember? We do not have to solve everything right now. I know. I just hate the idea of you not being in my life every day. Weekends are not enough. They are not enough for me either. But I also do not want you to resent me if you make some dramatic gesture like moving here and giving up everything you have built. I would not resent you. You might. And I would hate that even more than missing you during the week." She was probably right, but that did not make the situation less frustrating. Ethan pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "I love you, Natalie. I know we have only been together for 2 months and it is probably crazy, but I love you." He felt her arms tighten around him. "I love you too. We will figure it out. I have faith in us." The solution came from an unexpected source. Ethan was in Seattle for a board meeting when one of his directors mentioned wanting to expand their West Coast operations. They had been routing most of their California shipments through the port of Oakland, but there was an opportunity to establish a more significant presence in the region, maybe even open a full West Coast headquarters. It would require someone senior to oversee the transition, the director said. Maybe a year or two of heavy presence in California before we could hand it off to regional management. Ethan's mind started racing. What if it was not temporary? What if we seriously considered splitting operations, running the company from both Seattle and California? The room went quiet. It was an unconventional idea, and Ethan could see the board members processing it. "That is a significant structural change," someone said carefully. "It is also smart business," Ethan countered, falling into the familiar rhythm of making his case. "We have been trying to expand our West Coast market share for years. Having a permanent senior presence in California would give us advantages our competitors do not have. And modern technology makes remote leadership more viable than ever." Marcus was watching him with knowing eyes. "And it would let you be closer to Napa Valley on a more permanent basis." "That too," Ethan admitted, "but it genuinely makes business sense. I would not propose it otherwise." The meeting ended without a decision, but Ethan knew he had planted the seed. Over the next few weeks, he built a detailed proposal, showing exactly how a dual headquarters model could work, the costs and benefits, the logistics. It was some of the most energized he had felt about business in years, because it was not just about profit margins, it was about building a life. He did not tell Natalie what he was planning. He wanted to have a real solution before he got her hopes up, but it was hard to keep secrets from someone who read people as well as she did. "You are up to something," she said during one of his weekend visits. They were at a small wine bar where Natalie was consulting on building their collection, and she had paused in her evaluation of a Merlot to study him. "What makes you say that? You have this look. Like you are planning a corporate takeover but trying to be subtle about it." "Maybe I am just happy to see you." "You are always happy to see me. This is different. You are scheming." Ethan laughed and kissed her forehead. "If I am scheming, it is in a good way. Trust me." "I do trust you. That is the scary part." 2 weeks later, the board approved his proposal. It would take time to implement, but by early next year, Ethan would be spending at least 3 weeks out of every month in California, overseeing the establishment of their West Coast headquarters. He would need to find a place to live, probably somewhere between San Francisco and Napa, to make the commute to both locations manageable. It was not perfect, but it was real, and it was possible. He told Natalie over dinner at her apartment. She had made pasta, and they were sitting on her tiny balcony with its view of the street below, and he just said it plainly. "I am moving to California." "Well, partially. The company is opening a West Coast headquarters, and I am going to oversee it. I will still need to go back to Seattle periodically, but I will be here most of the time." Natalie stared at him, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. "What?" "I am moving here to be closer to you. But also because it is smart business. I promise I am not making some reckless romantic gesture that I will regret. This actually makes sense for the company." "Ethan, that is huge. Are you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything. I love you, Natalie. I want to build a life with you, and I cannot do that from 1,000 miles away." She set down her fork and covered her face with her hands. For a terrifying moment, Ethan thought she was upset. Then he realized she was crying. "Hey, no, what is wrong?" He moved to kneel beside her chair, pulling her hands away from her face. "Nothing is wrong. I am just overwhelmed, and so in love with you I can barely stand it." She laughed through her tears. "No one has ever done anything like this for me. I would do anything for you. I think you know that by now." She kissed him desperately, tasting like salt and wine and happiness. "I love you so much. Thank you for choosing me, for choosing us. Always." The next few months were chaotic as Ethan split his time between overseeing the merger in Seattle and planning the California expansion. He found a house in Sonoma, a beautiful craftsman with a view of the hills and a wine cellar that made Natalie laugh with delight when she first saw it. It needed work, but it had good bones and enough space for both of them if they got to that point. He was already hoping they would. Natalie's business was thriving too. Word had spread about her skill as a sommelier, and she was being hired for bigger events, consulting for more prestigious restaurants. She was saving money toward her dream vineyard, getting closer to making it a reality. Ethan helped where she would let him, which mostly meant making introductions to people in his network who might need her services. He was careful never to push too hard, respecting her fierce independence. By the time he officially moved to California in January, their relationship had settled into something deep and comfortable and right. They did not live together yet, but they spent most nights at one of their places, falling into an easy domestic rhythm of cooking together and talking for hours and waking up tangled in each other's arms. Ethan's sister Claire came to visit that spring and pulled him aside during a hike similar to the one where he had first told Natalie he was falling in love. "You look happy," Claire said. "Really happy. Not fake business smile happy, but genuinely content." "I am. She is incredible, Claire. She challenges me and supports me and makes me want to be better. I cannot imagine my life without her." "Then maybe you should make sure she stays in it permanently." Ethan had been thinking the same thing. He had been thinking about it constantly, actually. He and Natalie had been together for almost a year now, and every day only made him more certain that she was it for him. The person he wanted to come home to build a life with, to grow old with. He started looking at rings. It felt simultaneously too soon and long overdue. He consulted with Claire, who helped him find a jeweler who could create something unique and meaningful rather than just expensive. The ring they designed together had a small diamond held by vines of rose gold, delicate and beautiful and perfect for Natalie. The hard part was figuring out how to propose. Natalie was not the type for grand public gestures or elaborate productions. She valued authenticity over performance. So Ethan planned something simple and personal, hoping it would be enough. He chose the vineyard where they had first met, the wine cellar where he had watched her talk about passion and courage and fallen halfway in love with her in the span of an evening. He arranged it with the venue owner, who remembered them both and thought it was wonderfully romantic. Getting Natalie there without her suspecting anything required some creativity. Ethan told her he wanted to revisit the place where they met, a sort of anniversary celebration even though it had not been quite a full year. She agreed easily, always up for any excuse to visit a vineyard. They arrived in the early evening, the same soft amber lighting filling the cellar. Ethan had arranged for them to be completely alone, no other guests or staff. On the heavy wooden table sat a single bottle of wine and 2 glasses. "This is lovely," Natalie said, looking around with obvious nostalgia. "I cannot believe it has been almost a year. It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time." "I know what you mean." Ethan poured them each a glass of wine, his hand surprisingly steady despite his racing heart. "Do you remember what you said to me that night? About wine being stories, about passion being what makes life worth living?" "I remember. You looked so skeptical, like you could not believe someone actually cared that much about fermented grapes." "You changed everything for me that night, Natalie. You made me realize I had been living half a life, focusing so much on building success that I forgot to build happiness. And then you showed me what it could look like to really love what you do, to let passion drive you. You made me want more, better, real. Ethan." She was starting to look suspicious in the best way. He set down his glass and pulled the small box from his pocket, dropping to one knee. Natalie's hand flew to her mouth. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. You are brilliant and passionate and brave and beautiful, and you make every single day better just by being in it. I do not want to spend another day without knowing you will be in my life forever. Natalie Kane, will you marry me?" He opened the box, and Natalie let out a small gasp when she saw the ring with its delicate vine design. "It is perfect," she whispered. "You are perfect. Yes, absolutely yes." Ethan stood and slipped the ring onto her finger, and then she was in his arms and they were both laughing and crying and kissing all at once. It was messy and emotional and absolutely perfect. "I love you so much," Natalie said between kisses. "I did not think I could love you more than I already did, but somehow I do. We are going to have such a good life together," Ethan promised, "the best life." They stayed in the wine cellar for hours, drinking the wine and making plans, and just being together in the place where everything had started. Natalie kept looking at her ring and smiling this soft, wondering smile that made Ethan's heart clench with joy. When they finally left and started driving back to Sonoma, Natalie turned to him with sudden seriousness. "I want to elope," she said. "What?" "I do not want some big wedding where we have to invite 100 people and plan every detail for months. I just want to marry you, soon. Let us elope somewhere beautiful and just focus on us." Ethan thought about the elaborate weddings in his social circle, the pressure to turn their marriage into a networking event. The idea of skipping all of that and just focusing on what actually mattered was incredibly appealing. "Where do you want to go?" he asked. "Italy. Tuscany specifically. There is a tiny vineyard there. The owners are friends of mine. They could help us arrange something small and perfect. Just us and maybe Claire and a few close friends. What do you think?" "I think you are brilliant and I love you, and when do we leave?" She laughed, delighted. "Give me 2 weeks to clear my schedule and find a dress. Can you manage that?" "For you, I can manage anything." 2 weeks later, they were on a plane to Italy with Claire, Marcus, and two of Natalie's closest friends from her sommelier training. The vineyard in Tuscany was everything Natalie had promised: rolling hills covered in grapevines, an old stone villa that had been in the same family for generations, and an intimate chapel that seated maybe 20 people. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. Natalie wore a cream-colored dress that she had found in a vintage shop, simple and elegant and perfectly her. Ethan wore a suit but no tie, because Natalie said she liked him better without one. They wrote their own vows, standing in the small chapel with afternoon light streaming through the stained glass windows. "Ethan, you took a woman who was content being alone and showed her what partnership could really look like," Natalie said, her voice steady despite her tears. "You support my dreams without trying to control them. You challenge me to be better while loving me exactly as I am. You chose to build a life that included me rather than asking me to fit into the one you already had. That is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me, and I promise to spend the rest of my life giving you that same gift. I love you." Ethan had to clear his throat before he could speak. "Natalie, I thought I knew who I was before I met you, a successful businessman who had his life figured out. But I was just going through motions, checking boxes, never really feeling anything. You taught me what passion looks like, what it means to really live instead of just exist. You made me braver and softer and more human. I promise to love your fire, to support your dreams, to be the partner you deserve. You are my home, and I am so grateful I found you." When the officiant pronounced them married, and Ethan kissed his wife for the first time, their small group of friends erupted in cheers. It was joyful and intimate, and exactly what they both wanted. The reception was held in the vineyard itself. Long tables set up between the rows of vines, incredible food prepared by the villa's chef, and wine that Natalie had helped select flowing freely. They danced under string lights as the sun set over the Tuscan hills, and Ethan thought he had never been happier in his entire life. "So, Mrs. Reynolds," he said as they swayed together to music playing from someone's phone, "how does it feel to be married to a billionaire?" "Pretty much the same as dating him, except now I do not have to feel guilty about drinking his expensive wine." She grinned up at him. "How does it feel to be married to a sommelier? Like I finally got my priorities straight." Later, as the party was winding down and their friends were pleasantly drunk and laughing, Claire found Ethan and gave him a tight hug. "I am so happy for you," she said. "You found someone who sees you, really sees you. Do not take that for granted." "I will not, I promise." "Good. Now go enjoy your wife. And maybe give me a niece or nephew in a year or two because I am getting impatient." Ethan laughed but did not argue. He and Natalie had talked about kids, about building a family together, and both of them wanted it. Not immediately, but someday soon. The thought filled him with warm anticipation. He found Natalie standing at the edge of the vineyard, looking out at the view with her wine glass in hand. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned back against him with a contented sigh. "Best day of my life," she said. "Mine too. Though I have a feeling we are going to have a lot of competition for that title in the years ahead. I like the sound of that. A whole lifetime of best days." They stayed in Italy for 2 weeks. A honeymoon spent visiting small vineyards and eating incredible food, and just being together without the pressures of their normal lives. Natalie took notes everywhere they went, asking winemakers questions and tasting everything with that same passionate attention she brought to everything she did. Ethan watched her light up with each new discovery and felt grateful all over again that this brilliant, passionate woman had chosen him. When they returned to California, they moved into Ethan's house in Sonoma together, combining their lives in that permanent, domestic way that felt both monumental and completely natural. Natalie's clothes appeared in his closet. Her books on wine and viticulture filled half the shelves. Her energy filled every room. Work continued for both of them, but it felt different now, more balanced. Ethan had learned to step back from the constant pressure of running his company, delegating more and trusting his team. He still worked hard, but he also made sure to be home for dinner most nights, to take weekends off, to be present for the life he was building with Natalie. Natalie's consulting business continued to thrive, and she started teaching classes on wine appreciation for beginners, enjoying the challenge of making wine accessible rather than intimidating. She still talked about someday having her own vineyard, but she no longer seemed in a rush. She was building toward it methodically, learning everything she could, saving money, waiting for the right opportunity. That opportunity came 8 months after their wedding. A small vineyard about 20 minutes from their house went up for sale, and the moment Natalie saw the listing, Ethan knew this was different from all the others she had looked at over the years. "This is it," she said, staring at her phone with wide eyes. "This is the one." They visited the next day. The vineyard was modest, only 15 acres, with older vines that had been neglected but not ruined. The previous owner had retired and moved to Arizona, and the property had sat empty for 6 months. It needed work, a lot of work, but Ethan could see Natalie mentally cataloging everything as they walked the rows. "The bones are good," she said, running her hand along a gnarled vine. "These vines are over 30 years old. If I can bring them back, the wine they produce will be incredible. Complex, deep, the kind of thing that tells a real story. Then let us buy it." She turned to him sharply. "Ethan, we cannot just buy a vineyard on impulse. This is a massive investment, years of work before it will produce any return. I would need to hire help, invest in equipment, learn the production side while keeping up my consulting to pay for it all. It is overwhelming. So we will be overwhelmed together. Natalie, this is your dream. I have more money than we could ever spend, and the only thing that matters to me is seeing you happy. Let me help you make this happen. I do not want to be dependent on you financially. I do not want you to be able to hold this over me, even subconsciously." Ethan understood her fear, rooted in that failed engagement and her determination to stand on her own. "Okay. Then we will structure it as a business investment. You will be the majority owner, the one making all the decisions. I will be a silent partner, providing capital but not interfering. We will get lawyers to draw up a real agreement, everything official. And if you ever want to buy me out, you can. Does that work?" She studied him for a long moment, and he could see her wrestling with pride and pragmatism and hope. Finally, she nodded. "Okay. But I am really going to be the one in charge. You do not get to swoop in and try to optimize my processes or whatever billionaire thing you would normally do. I promise to keep my billionaire tendencies to myself. Then let us do this. Let us buy a vineyard." The next few months were a blur of paperwork and planning and physical labor. They closed on the property in December, and Natalie immediately threw herself into restoration. She hired a vineyard manager named Tom who had 40 years of experience and did not seem at all intimidated by Natalie's ambitious plans. Together they pruned and assessed and planned for the spring planting that would fill in the gaps in the existing rows. Ethan helped where he could, which mostly meant doing manual labor under Tom's direction, and watching his wife become more animated and passionate than he had ever seen her. She was in her element, covered in dirt at the end of each day, exhausted and exhilarated in equal measure. "I cannot believe this is real," she said one evening as they sat on the porch of the small cottage on the property that they were slowly renovating into a tasting room. "I have a vineyard. We have a vineyard. I keep expecting to wake up. It is real. And you are going to make incredible wine here. I can already tell." "How can you possibly tell? We have not even made any yet. Because you are incredible and you pour your whole heart into everything you do. Whatever wine comes from this place, it will be worth drinking because it will have your passion in every bottle." She kissed him softly. "You really believe in me, do not you? More than you believe in yourself sometimes, though you are getting better at that." "I am. Because you make me feel like I can do anything." The vineyard became their shared project, though Natalie remained firmly in charge. Ethan learned more about wine in those months than he had in his entire life, understanding for the first time the intricate balance of art and science that went into every bottle. He developed a genuine appreciation for what Natalie did, seeing how much knowledge and intuition it required. They decided to name the vineyard Vita, which meant life in Italian, a nod to their wedding in Tuscany and to the new life they were building together. Natalie designed a simple, elegant label, and they started planning for their first real harvest in the fall. That summer, Natalie told him she was pregnant. They were working in the vineyard when she said it, checking the developing grape clusters to assess how the vintage was shaping up. Natalie had been quiet all morning, and Ethan finally asked if something was wrong. "Not wrong," she said, setting down her pruning shears and turning to face him. "Just life-changing. I am pregnant, about 8 weeks." Ethan felt his heart stop and restart. "Really, really. I took 3 tests to be sure. We are going to have a baby." He pulled her into his arms, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to have a baby. That is incredible. You are incredible. How are you feeling? Are you okay? Should you be working out here in the sun?" "I am fine. Pregnant, not fragile. Though I might need you to take over some of the heavier lifting as I get bigger." "I will take over all the heavy lifting. I will take over everything. Just tell me what you need. I need you to keep being exactly who you are. The man who believes in me and supports my dreams and loves me even when I am stubborn and difficult. That is the easiest job in the world." Their daughter, Emma Claire Reynolds, was born the following March on a rainy morning that felt like the world washing clean for her arrival. She was perfect, tiny and red-faced and absolutely perfect. Ethan held her for the first time and felt something fundamental shift in his chest, a love so fierce and complete it was almost frightening. Natalie was an amazing mother, adapting to the chaos of a newborn with the same passion and determination she brought to everything else. She took a few months off from most of her consulting work, focusing on Emma and continuing to oversee the vineyard as much as she could. Ethan cut back his hours even further, determined not to be an absent father the way his own dad had often been. He wanted to be there for first smiles and middle of the night feedings, and all the small moments that made up a life. His company had good leadership. They could handle things without him being constantly available. Emma grew, and so did their family in the house in Sonoma. It was filled with the sounds of a baby, with Natalie singing while she worked, with laughter and exhaustion and overwhelming love. Ethan had never imagined this life for himself, never pictured himself as a husband and father who worked at a vineyard and cooked dinner most nights. But it was the best life he could have imagined. The first bottles of Vita wine were released when Emma was 6 months old. They held a small launch party at the vineyard, inviting friends and local wine enthusiasts and press. Natalie was nervous in a way Ethan rarely saw, pacing while people tasted the wine, waiting for reactions. The reviews were incredible. Wine critics praised the depth and complexity of the Cabernet Sauvignon, noting that it tasted like a vineyard with real history behind it. The Pinot Noir sold out within a week. Natalie's dream was not just real, it was succeeding. "I cannot believe this is my life," she said that night after everyone had left, and they were sitting in the cottage with Emma asleep in her carrier between them. "5 years ago, I was engaged to someone who thought my dreams were silly. Now I am married to you, we have this perfect daughter, and people are drinking wine that I made with my own hands. How did I get this lucky?" "We both got lucky," Ethan said, reaching over to take her hand. "You made me remember what it means to really live. To have passion and purpose beyond just accumulating success. You saved me from a life that looked good but felt empty. You gave me the space and support to become who I was meant to be. Not many men would be secure enough to let their wife be the star. You have always been the star, Natalie. I am just lucky enough to be in your orbit." She laughed and leaned over to kiss him, careful not to disturb the sleeping baby between them. "I love you so much. Thank you for taking a chance on a sommelier who talked too much about wine. Thank you for taking a chance on a billionaire who knew nothing about passion until he met you." As Emma started to stir, making the small noises that meant she would wake soon, Ethan looked at his wife and daughter and felt complete in a way he never had before. This was what mattered. Not the size of his bank account or the success of his company, but these two people who he loved more than anything. The years that followed were full and rich. Emma grew into a curious, energetic toddler who loved running through the vineyard rows and helping her mother taste grapes at harvest. Vita Wines gained a reputation for quality and authenticity, exactly what Natalie had hoped for. The business grew steadily, never massive but sustainable and successful. Ethan's company continued to thrive under his more balanced leadership style. He discovered that not working himself to exhaustion actually made him a better CEO, more creative and strategic because he had space to think. His team respected the boundaries he set, and the company culture improved as a result. When Emma was 3, Natalie got pregnant again. Their son, Michael, arrived the following summer, and suddenly their household was even more chaotic and joyful. 2 children running through the house, baby sounds mixing with toddler chatter, the beautiful mess of a full life. They hired more help at the vineyard as it continued to grow, allowing Natalie to balance motherhood with her passion. She was exceptional at both, somehow managing to be present for her children, while still maintaining the hands-on involvement with the wine that made Vita special. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they recreated that first wine tasting where they had met. They rented the same cellar, invited the same friends who had been at their elopement, and Ethan stood in the same spot where he had first watched Natalie talk about passion and courage. 5 years ago, I stood right here and listened to a beautiful sommelier tell me that wine was about stories and passion, not just flavor profiles, he said, addressing the room but looking only at Natalie. I thought I had my life figured out. I thought success meant building the biggest company and making the most money. And then this woman made me drunk on her passion, not the wine. Their friends laughed, and Natalie blushed, holding Michael on her hip while Emma clung to her leg. She showed me what it means to really live, to love what you do so completely that work stops feeling like work. She gave me a life I did not even know I wanted, and it is better than anything I could have planned. Natalie, you are my favorite story, and I am grateful every single day that you let me be part of yours. Now you are going to make me cry, Natalie said, her voice thick with emotion. I love you. Thank you for seeing me, for believing in me, for building this beautiful life with me." They kissed while their friends cheered and their children squirmed between them, and Ethan thought about how much had changed since that first night. He was not the same man who had walked into this wine cellar skeptical and disconnected. Natalie had transformed him, opened him up, taught him to feel and dream and love with his whole heart. Years continued to pass, each one full of its own joys and challenges. Emma and Michael grew, the vineyard thrived, Ethan's business evolved. They navigated the normal ups and downs of marriage and parenthood and entrepreneurship, but always together, always choosing each other. On their 10th anniversary, Ethan proposed something new. What if we expanded Vita? Not dramatically, but enough to really establish it as a premier vineyard. We could buy the adjacent property that just went up for sale, double our production capacity while maintaining quality. Natalie considered it, no longer immediately resistant to his business input. They had learned to be true partners over the years, respecting each other's expertise. That would mean hiring more staff, which means less hands-on work for me. It would also mean more stability, more legacy to pass on to the kids if they are interested, but only if you want to. This is your dream, not mine. It is our dream now, she corrected. You are not a silent partner anymore, even if the paperwork says you are. You have put your heart into this place as much as I have. Let us do it. Let us grow together. They bought the land and expanded carefully, maintaining the quality and personal touch that made Vita special while increasing production. Emma, now 10 years old, started showing real interest in the vineyard, asking questions about the winemaking process and helping during harvest. Michael preferred the business side, curious about how they sold the wine and managed customers. They are going to be a good team someday, Natalie said one evening as they watched the kids help bottle wine under Tom's supervision. If they want to take this over. And if they do not, that is okay too. We are doing this because we love it, not to create an obligation for them. When did you become so wise about work-life balance? I had a good teacher, a sommelier who taught me that passion and purpose matter more than profit. She sounds smart. The smartest. Also the most beautiful, but that is beside the point. Natalie laughed and kissed him, and Ethan marveled again at how lucky he was. He had spent years chasing a version of success that left him empty, and then a passionate sommelier had shown him what actually mattered. Not the size of his bank account or the prestige of his company, but the richness of his relationships, the depth of his love, the fulfillment that came from work that meant something. As the sun set over their vineyard, their children's laughter echoing through the rows of vines, Ethan pulled his wife close and thought about that night 10 years ago when he had walked into a wine cellar expecting boredom and found his entire life instead. I love you, he said, the words never getting old no matter how many times he said them. I love you too. Forever. Forever, Ethan thought, was going to be wonderful. Full of wine and laughter and children, and the everyday magic of building a life with someone who understood that passion, was not frivolous. It was everything. Natalie had taught him that with her love of wine, and he had learned the lesson so well that it had transformed everything about who he was. They stood together as darkness fell, watching stars appear over their vineyard, their home, their beautiful life. It was not the life Ethan had planned, but it was so much better than anything he could have imagined. And it had all started with a billionaire going to a wine tasting and falling completely, irrevocably in love with a sommelier's passion.